Dr. Park Minji pressed her face against the viewing window of the research vessel Harmony and watched the alien ship approach through the dark space near Kepler 442. The ship looked like a giant crystal floating in the void, its surface catching and bending starlight into rainbow patterns that hurt her eyes to look at directly. She had been waiting 3 years for this moment since the first alien signals were detected, and now first contact was finally happening. Captain Lee Hyun-woo stood beside her, his hand resting on his weapon belt out of habit. He was a good man but careful, which was why Admiral Kim Tae-ho had chosen him to escort the science mission. The captain watched the alien vessel dock with their ship and felt his stomach twist with nervousness. Humanity had dreamed of meeting other intelligent life for centuries, but now that it was happening, he wondered if they were ready. The airlock door opened with a soft hiss, and the aliens stepped through. They were tall, much taller than humans, with skin that looked like clear glass filled with slowly moving liquid light. Their bodies had 4 arms instead of 2, and their faces were smooth with large eyes that changed color, like oil on water. They moved gracefully, as if they were swimming through air instead of walking. Dr. Park Minji stepped forward and held up her hands in what she hoped was a friendly gesture. She had practiced this moment many times, knowing that first impressions could determine the future of both species. The lead alien copied her movement, raising 2 of its 4 arms in response. It made soft musical sounds that their translation computers tried to convert into words. "We are called Velathi," the computer voice said, turning the alien sounds into flat electronic words. "We seek knowledge of your kind." Dr. Park Minji smiled and nodded. "We are humans. We also seek knowledge and friendship." The next few hours passed like a wonderful dream. The Velathi seemed fascinated by everything about humans. They asked about human biology, human culture, human technology. Dr. Park Minji showed them pictures of Earth, of human cities, of human art and music. The aliens studied everything with intense interest, their eyes shifting through different colors as they absorbed new information. The Velathi leader, who called itself Tharn, explained that their species traveled between the stars looking for other intelligent life. They had met many species over the centuries, but humans seemed special to them. Humans were adaptable, Tharn explained, able to survive in many different environments. This made them very interesting to study. Captain Lee Hyun-woo listened to the conversations but felt uneasy. Something about the way the Velathi asked their questions bothered him, though he could not explain why. They seemed especially interested in human physical capabilities, human population numbers, and the locations of human colonies. When he mentioned his concerns to Dr. Park Minji, she told him not to worry. Scientific curiosity was natural, she said. Over the following weeks, the cultural exchange continued. The Velathi shared some of their technology, showing humans how to create new materials that were stronger than anything Earth science had developed. In return, Dr. Park Minji provided biological samples and detailed information about human settlements throughout the 17 colonized star systems. The Velathi seemed particularly fascinated by human resilience. They conducted careful tests, observing how humans reacted to stress, how quickly they healed from injuries, how they adapted to new situations. Dr. Park Minji was happy to help, believing that this research would benefit both species. Ambassador Yoon Ji-won arrived from Earth to formalize the relationship between humans and Velathi. She was an experienced diplomat who had handled first contact protocols for the Terran government. The signing ceremony was broadcast across all human worlds, showing the historic moment when humanity joined the galactic community. But Captain Lee Hyun-woo could not shake his feeling that something was wrong. The Velathi asked too many questions, about human defenses, about the locations of isolated colonies, about how quickly human ships could travel between systems. When he tried to ask questions about Velathi society in return, their answers were always vague and brief. 3 months after first contact, Captain Lee Hyun-woo decided to conduct a routine patrol of the outer system while the scientists continued their work. His ship, the New Soul, was fast and well armed, perfect for checking on the remote research stations that monitored the system's edge. What he found on the dark side of Kepler 4042c changed everything. The Velati facility was enormous, built into the rocky surface of the moon and hidden from normal scans. Captain Lee Hyunwoo's ship detected it only by accident when his navigation officer noticed unusual heat signatures coming from what should have been empty rock. The facility contained rows upon rows of biopods, each one holding a human being suspended in glowing liquid. Captain Lee Hyunwoo counted thousands of them as his ship's cameras recorded everything. Men, women, children, all floating unconscious in the alien machinery. Commander Choi Dae-won led the boarding team that broke into the facility. What they found inside made even experienced soldiers sick. The Velati were not just studying humans. They were harvesting them. The facility contained detailed plans for creating modified humans, stronger and more obedient than natural ones. Perfect slaves for Velati colonies. The computer records showed the truth that made Captain Lee Hyunwoo's blood run cold. Every human colony that had gone dark over the past 3 years had not suffered equipment failures or pirate attacks. The Velati had taken them all. Over 200,000 humans had been captured and brought to facilities like this one throughout Velati space. Commander Choi Dae-won found the worst evidence in the deepest part of the facility. Thousands of human bodies discarded after the Velati finished their experiments. The aliens had been testing different ways to break human will, to make humans more compliant and useful as workers. Captain Lee Hyunwoo immediately contacted Admiral Kim Tae-ho on Earth. The transmission took hours to reach the Admiral's office, but when it arrived, it changed the course of human history. Admiral Kim Tae-ho watched the footage in silence, his face growing harder with each passing minute. He was a career military officer who had spent his life protecting human space, and now he learned that an alien species had been systematically harvesting human beings like livestock. The Admiral's response was immediate and decisive. He sent a message on all Velati communication frequencies, broadcast across every star system where the aliens had been detected. The message was simple and direct. Return our people, all of them. You have 72 hours. If you flee, we will follow you to the edge of the universe. The Velati response came within hours. Instead of negotiating or explaining, they destroyed the harvesting facility on Kepler 442c, killing all the humans held there. Then their entire fleet vanished into quantum space, fleeing toward the galactic rim at maximum speed. Dr. Park Minji watched the alien ships disappear from her laboratory window and felt her heart break. She had believed in friendship between the species, had trusted the Velati with information about human colonies and capabilities. Now she realized that her scientific cooperation had helped the aliens hunt her own species more effectively. Admiral Kim Tae-ho called an emergency meeting of all human governments. Representatives from every colony world gathered via quantum communication to hear the terrible truth about their new alien friends. When the evidence was presented, the response was unanimous. Humanity would not let this stand. Every human world contributed resources to the largest military mobilization in their species' history. Shipyards worked around the clock, factories converted to military production, and volunteers lined up at recruitment centers across human space. The hunt was about to begin. General Nam Soo-hyun stood in the command center of the Mars orbital shipyard and watched thousands of workers swarm over the hull of humanity's newest warship. 6 months had passed since the Velati betrayal, and human industrial capacity had transformed completely. Every asteroid belt in human space now contained shipyards. Every colony world had converted its factories to military production. The ship taking shape before her was unlike anything humans had built before. The Endurance was the first of the new Pursuit-class vessels, designed specifically for long-distance hunting across the galaxy. Engineer Bae Sun-ho had worked day and night to create the revolutionary persistence drive system that would power it. The drive works on a simple principle, Engineer Bae Sun-ho explained to the assembled fleet commanders. Instead of trying to be faster than our prey, we focus on never stopping. The Velati ships are quick, but they need to rest and refuel. Our ships can maintain pursuit indefinitely. Dr. Kang Yuna stepped forward to explain her quantum signature tracking technology. Her discovery had made the hunt possible by creating a way to follow the Velothi no matter where they fled. Every ship leaves traces in quantum space, she said. Like footprints in snow. The Velothi think they can hide, but we can follow their trail across the galaxy. Captain Han Ji-young had spent the past months testing the new stealth reconnaissance ships deep in space. Her vessel, the Ghostwalker, could track Velothi movements without being detected. She brought back disturbing news from her latest mission. They are not just running, she reported to Admiral Kim Tae-ho. The Velothi are following established routes toward the Galactic Rim. They have done this before many times. We found evidence of abandoned harvesting facilities in 7 different star systems. The evidence painted a horrifying picture. The Velothi were not a normal spacefaring species exploring the galaxy. They were locusts, moving from region to region, harvesting intelligent life and then moving on when resistance became too strong. They had been doing this for thousands of years. Admiral Kim Tae-ho studied the star charts showing Velothi movement patterns. The aliens were fleeing toward a region of space that no human had ever explored, far beyond the edge of known civilization. Most species would have given up the pursuit at this point, declaring the enemy too distant to follow. Humans were not most species. Prepare the fleet, Admiral Kim Tae-ho ordered. We follow them into the dark. The first major contact with other galactic civilizations came when the human pursuit fleet entered the territory of the Galactic Council. The Council was an alliance of 12 advanced species that had maintained peace and stability in their region of the galaxy for over 1,000 years. The Council's reaction to human plans was immediate and negative. Ambassador Yoon Ji-won found herself standing before representatives of a dozen alien species, all united in their opposition to the human pursuit mission. The Mirren delegation, aquatic beings who communicated through color changes in their transparent skin, expressed their concern through their translator. Violence begets violence, the electronic voice said. The proper response to aggression is isolation, not pursuit. The insectoid Hector representative clicked and buzzed angrily. The Velothi fled beyond our territory. They are no longer our problem. Your pursuit will only bring chaos to stable regions. Ambassador Yoon Ji-won listened to their arguments with growing frustration. These were advanced civilizations with technology far beyond human capabilities, but they lacked something that she now realized was uniquely human: the inability to let injustice go unpunished. You knew about the Velothi, she said finally. You knew they were harvesting species and you did nothing. You chose to look away as long as they did not touch your worlds. The council members shifted uncomfortably. The truth was obvious. They had known about Velothi activities but had chosen to ignore them rather than risk conflict. It was easier to let other species suffer than to take action. We offer you relocation, the Mirren representative said. There are safe sectors where humans could establish new colonies, far from Velothi territory. Ambassador Yoon Ji-won's response became famous throughout the galaxy. We do not run from bullies, we run them down. When Captain Han Ji-young returned from her deepest reconnaissance mission, she brought news that shocked even the experienced military commanders. The Velothi had not stopped at the Galactic Rim as expected. They had continued fleeing into the void between galaxies. The quantum trail leads toward Andromeda, she reported. They are attempting an intergalactic crossing. The Galactic Council declared this impossible. No species had ever attempted to travel between galaxies. The distances were too vast, the journey too dangerous. Even if it were possible, no civilization would attempt such a journey just to continue a pursuit. General Nam Soo-hyun's response was delivered with calm certainty. Then we will be the first. Human engineering capabilities, pushed to their limits. By the crisis, achieved what many thought impossible. The generation ships under construction were unlike any vessels ever built. They were not colony ships designed to establish new settlements, but mobile cities designed for extended pursuit across the cosmic void. Engineer Bae Soon-ho worked with teams from every human world to design ships that could sustain pursuit for decades. The vessels would carry everything needed for a civilization to survive in the empty space between galaxies: factories, farms, schools, research facilities. They were hunting ships, but they were also humanity's commitment to never give up. The construction project united human space like nothing before. Every colony contributed resources and expertise. Earth's moon was converted into a single massive shipyard. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter disappeared, transformed into the hulls of pursuit vessels. Dr. Kang Yuna perfected her tracking technology for intergalactic distances. The quantum signatures left by Velothi ships could be followed even across the vast emptiness between spiral arms. "They cannot hide," she announced. "Distance only determines how long the hunt will take." As the great ships neared completion, refugees began arriving at human space. These were survivors from species that had encountered the Velothi and other regions of the galaxy. Each group told the same story. Entire civilizations harvested, populations taken for experimentation and slavery. The stories convinced any humans who still had doubts about the mission. The Velothi were not just humanity's problem. They were a plague that consumed intelligent life wherever they found it. Captain Park Jun-ho was chosen to command the lead pursuit vessel, renamed Endurance, in honor of humanity's commitment to the hunt. He was young for such responsibility, but he had trained his entire adult life for long-distance operations in hostile territory. "We are not seeking revenge," Captain Park Jun-ho told his crew as they prepared for departure. "We are the immune system of the universe. Someone has to hunt the hunters." The departure ceremony was broadcast across all human worlds. Families said goodbye to loved ones who might spend their entire lives in pursuit of justice. Children were born who would never see Earth, raised instead in the void between galaxies with the single purpose of catching the Velothi. As the great ships engaged their persistence drives and began the long journey toward Andromeda, Captain Han Ji-young sent one final message to the Galactic Council. "You could have stopped this," she transmitted. "You chose not to act when action was needed. Now watch what happens when someone who will not quit decides to solve the problem." The human fleet disappeared into the darkness between galaxies, following quantum traces toward a confrontation that would take decades to reach. Behind them, the galaxy watched and waited to see if humanity's impossible pursuit would succeed. The Velothi had made the mistake of thinking that distance could save them from human determination. They were about to learn that when humanity decided to chase something across the stars, distance only determined how long the hunt would take. Captain Park Jun-ho stood on the observation deck of the Endurance and stared into the absolute darkness between galaxies. 15 years had passed since the human fleet entered the void, and they were still decades away from Andromeda. Behind them, the Milky Way had shrunk to a small spiral of light. Ahead, their destination remained a distant smudge against the star-filled darkness. The void between galaxies was not empty as many had expected. Strange currents of dark matter created invisible rivers that the Velothi had used to speed their escape. Dr. Kang Yuna had learned to read these currents, following the quantum signatures left by alien ships like breadcrumbs leading toward their destination. Life aboard the pursuit fleet had settled into routines that would have been impossible to imagine back on Earth. Children born in the void had never seen a sunrise or felt natural gravity. They grew up knowing only the mission: follow the Velothi across the universe and make them pay for their crimes. Navigator O Sarum was one of these void-born humans. She had spent her entire 23 years learning to read the patterns of dark matter and quantum disturbance that marked the Velothi trail. Her enhanced spatial awareness, developed in the zero-gravity sections of the ship, allowed her to see connections that older navigators missed. "They are following ancient routes," she reported to Captain Park Jun-ho during one of their weekly meetings. "The Velothi have used these paths before, many times over millions of years. We are not the first to chase them across the void, Doctor." Kim Hae-in studied the psychological effects of the long pursuit on the human population. What she found surprised everyone. Instead of becoming discouraged or losing focus, the void-born generations were more determined than their Earth-born parents. The pursuit had become humanity's defining cultural element. "We are becoming something new," she wrote in her research report sent back toward the Milky Way. "Not just humans, but humanity focused into a single purpose. The children born here understand justice in ways that peaceful civilizations cannot. The first contact with other refugee species came in the 18th year of the pursuit. Navigator. Oseram detected unusual energy signatures drifting in the void, the remains of ships that had attempted the intergalactic crossing but failed to complete the journey. Major Song Kyung-ho led the investigation team that boarded the derelict vessels. What they found changed everything they thought they knew about the Velothi threat. The ships belonged to a species called the Cathani, crystalline beings not unlike the Velothi in appearance but completely different in behavior. The survivors, barely alive in emergency stasis pods, told a story that made human blood run cold. The Cathani had been a peaceful civilization spread across dozens of worlds in a distant spiral arm. The Velothi had arrived as they always did, pretending to seek knowledge and friendship. Within a decade, the Cathani civilization was harvested completely. Only a few thousand survivors escaped in ships barely capable of intergalactic flight. "We have been fleeing for over a century," the Cathani elder explained through translation software. "The Velothi consume everything. They have done this to dozens of civilizations across multiple galaxies." Captain Park Jun-ho made the decision that transformed the human pursuit from a rescue mission into something larger. The human fleet would not just follow the Velothi. They would gather every refugee species they found and build a coalition for justice. Over the following years, more refugee groups were discovered drifting in the void. The Sithmar, amphibious, beings whose water worlds had been drained by Velothi harvesting machines. The Veltoran, a hive mind species whose queens had been captured and enslaved to control entire populations. The Zefek, energy beings who had been trapped in containment fields and used as living batteries. Each species brought their own tragic story, but they also brought unique technologies and capabilities that strengthened the pursuit fleet. The Sithmar had developed advanced biotechnology that could create food and medicine from basic elements. The Veltoran understood group coordination in ways that amazed human commanders. The Zefek could manipulate energy in ways that made human ships faster and more efficient. Dr. Kim Haeun documented how the growing coalition changed human culture aboard the fleet. Children learned multiple languages, studied alien histories, and developed a sense of justice that extended far beyond their own species. They were becoming citizens of the universe rather than just Earth. Major Song Kyung-ho began training combined species assault teams, preparing for the eventual confrontation with the Velothi. Human persistence tactics were taught to every species. In the coalition, spreading the concept of relentless pursuit throughout the refugee communities. "Humans never give up" became the motto adopted by all species in the fleet. The idea that distance and time could not stop justice was revolutionary to species that had accepted defeat when faced with superior force. Navigator Oseram made the discovery that explained the Velothi's ultimate destination. Deep in the void between galaxies, she detected massive structures built from dark matter. Way stations constructed by the Velothi over millions of years to support their migrations between galaxies. The structures were ancient, some dating back geological ages. They showed that the Velothi had been harvesting civilizations and moving between galaxies for so long that it was their natural life cycle. They were not evil in the way humans understood evil. They were simply a cosmic parasite that consumed intelligence wherever they found it. "They do not think what they do is wrong," Navigator Oseram explained to the Coalition command staff. To them, other species exist only to be harvested. They cannot conceive of justice or consequence because nothing has ever followed them far enough to deliver it. Captain Park Jun-ho realized that humanity was carrying something unprecedented across the void. The concept that actions have consequences regardless of distance or time. The Velothi had never faced a species that would follow them between galaxies to demand justice. As the fleet approached the final stages of their intergalactic journey, long-range sensors began detecting signals from Andromeda. What they found horrified even the experienced coalition commanders. The Velothi had not fled to Andromeda to hide. They had gone there to establish their largest harvesting operation ever attempted. Entire sectors of the galaxy were under their control, with billions of enslaved beings supporting a civilization built on suffering. Dr. Kim Haen's final report before the confrontation captured the transformation that had occurred during the decades-long pursuit. "We are no longer the same species that left the Milky Way in pursuit of the Velathi," she wrote. "We have become something new, the universe's persistence hunters, carrying justice across impossible distances. The coalition fleet, now numbering in the thousands of ships and representing dozens of species united under human leadership, prepared for the final approach to Andromeda. 37 years of pursuit were about to reach their conclusion." Captain Park Jun-ho addressed the entire coalition in a broadcast that reached every ship in the fleet. "The Velathi think they have escaped justice by crossing the void between galaxies," he said. "They are about to learn that when someone decides to chase you across the stars, distance only determines how long it takes to catch up." As Andromeda grew larger in their viewing screens, the coalition fleet began final preparations for the confrontation that would determine the fate of countless civilizations. The greatest hunt in the history of the universe was approaching its end. Admiral Shin Minho watched Andromeda fill the main display of his flagship and tried to imagine what his grandfather, Admiral Kim Tae-ho, would think of this moment. 4 decades had passed since humanity began its pursuit of the Velathi, and now, the grandson carried on the family mission at the edge of another galaxy entirely. The coalition fleet had grown massive during the final approach to Andromeda. Ships from 17 different species now followed human command, united by their shared experience of Velathi horror and their faith in human persistence. What had begun as a rescue mission for 200,000 humans had become something far larger. Dr. Yeo Jihye stood beside the Admiral, studying the xenoarchaeology data streaming from their long-range sensors. What she was seeing in Andromeda's outer systems made her sick to her stomach, but also confirmed her worst theories about Velathi behavior. "They have been here before," she reported to the command staff, "multiple times across millions of years. The archaeological evidence shows at least 6 previous harvesting cycles in this galaxy. Each time they consume entire civilizations and then move on when resources run low." The scale of Velathi operations in Andromeda was beyond anything the coalition had imagined. Entire star systems had been converted into processing facilities. Hundreds of species had been enslaved to support the Velathi empire. Some civilizations had been harvested so completely that only empty worlds remained as evidence they had ever existed. Captain Seo Yunbi led the reconnaissance flights that gathered intelligence on Velathi defenses. Her squadron of stealth fighters had been modified with technology from all coalition species, making them nearly invisible to Velathi sensors. What they found during their scouting missions was both encouraging and terrifying. "They are not prepared for warfare," she reported after her first deep reconnaissance mission. "The Velathi have never faced serious resistance. Their ships are designed for harvesting and transport, not combat, but their numbers are enormous." Colonel Se Lim Dongjun studied the tactical situation with growing confidence. His special forces teams had trained for 4 decades to assault Velathi positions. They knew Velathi technology, Velathi tactics, Velathi psychology better than the aliens knew themselves. Most importantly, they understood something the Velathi did not: the concept of justice that could not be escaped. The first direct confrontation came when Velathi patrol ships discovered the coalition fleet entering Andromeda's outer spiral. Arms. The alien ships approached with their usual arrogant confidence, expecting to find another helpless species to harvest. Captain Seo Yunbi's fighters struck without warning, destroying the Velathi patrol in minutes. The aliens had time to send only a brief transmission before their ships were reduced to debris drifting in space. The message that reached Velathi command centers was simple and shocking. Something had followed them across the void between galaxies. Admiral Shin Minho ordered the coalition fleet to broadcast a message on all Velathi frequencies, the same words his grandfather had spoken 4 decades earlier. "Return our people, all of them." The Velathi response revealed how completely they had forgotten the original crime that started the pursuit. Their High Harvester sent a confused reply, asking what people the coalition was talking about. To the Velathi, the humans harvested decades. Ego were so insignificant, They had been completely forgotten. Dr. Yeo Jihee's research into Velathi psychology helped explain their casual cruelty. They do not see other species as truly alive, she explained to the Coalition command staff. To them, we are resources to be processed, no different from minerals or energy sources. They cannot understand why anyone would seek revenge for harvesting. The Velathi leadership, faced with the impossible reality of an intergalactic pursuit force, initially tried their traditional response to resistance. They offered the Coalition junior partnership in their harvesting operations, promising to share a small percentage of the wealth gained from enslaving other species. Admiral Shin Minho's rejection of their offer was broadcast throughout Andromeda, reaching millions of enslaved beings in Velathi facilities. We do not negotiate with those who harm the innocent, he declared. Justice delayed is not justice denied. The message sparked uprisings across Velathi-controlled space. Species that had been enslaved for generations suddenly realized that resistance was possible. The concept of justice carried by humans across the void between galaxies spread like fire through the oppressed populations. The Velathi found themselves facing a type of warfare they had never encountered. Human persistence tactics, taught to Coalition species during the long pursuit, proved devastatingly effective against an enemy that had never learned to fight determined opposition. Colonel Lim Dongjun's Special Forces teams infiltrated Velathi facilities across multiple star systems. They did not attempt to conquer territory or destroy infrastructure. Instead, they focused on liberation, freeing enslaved populations and teaching them human concepts of never surrendering, never accepting defeat. We are not conquerors, Colonel Lim Dongjun explained to his teams. We are teachers. We teach the universe that actions have consequences, that distance does not equal safety, that someone will always come for those who prey on the innocent. The psychological impact on Velathi forces was profound. They had operated for millions of years with complete impunity, certain that their victims could never threaten them. The arrival of a coalition that had crossed intergalactic space specifically to hunt them shattered their fundamental worldview. Captain Seo Yunbi led the assault on the primary Velathi command center, a massive station built inside a hollow moon in Andromeda's core region. The battle was fierce but brief. Velathi forces simply had no experience fighting enemies who refused to retreat regardless of casualties. The station's databanks contained records that horrified even the experienced Coalition commanders. The Velathi had harvested over 3,000 civilizations across their history, consuming entire galaxies before moving on to fresh feeding grounds. They had been the death of countless species, the end of countless worlds. But the data also revealed something crucial. The Velathi were not as unified as they appeared. Faced with serious resistance for the first time in their history, different factions began competing to find escape routes. Some wanted to fight, others wanted to flee to even more distant galaxies. Admiral Shin Minho recognized the opportunity and ordered the Coalition to exploit Velathi divisions. Human psychological warfare specialists, working with experts from refugee species, began broadcasting messages designed to increase Velathi panic and confusion. The messages were simple but effective. We followed you across one void between galaxies. We will follow you across as many as it takes. There is nowhere you can run that we will not eventually find you. The Velathi Empire began to fragment as different groups attempted different survival strategies. Some tried to negotiate, others tried to fight, still others simply fled in random directions hoping to escape the persistent hunters who had somehow tracked them across impossible distances. Dr. Yeo Jihye made the discovery that would end the war. Deep in the captured command station's records, she found the location of the Velathi homeworld, a massive artificial construct hidden in Andromeda's galactic core, containing the original population and the leadership that had directed harvesting operations for millions of years. They are not spread throughout the galaxy as we thought, she reported to Admiral Shin Minho. Most of their population lives in a single megastructure. If we can reach it, we can end this permanently. Admiral Shin Minho studied the tactical situation and realized that 40 years of pursuit had led to this single moment. The Coalition fleet, battle-tested and united by their shared mission, was positioned to deliver justice for countless civilizations. The final assault would require everything humanity and their allies had learned during the long hunt across the void. It would be the ultimate test of human persistence against an enemy that had never faced consequences for their actions. As the Coalition fleet prepared for the attack on the Velothi homeworld, Admiral Shin Minho sent a final message to his grandfather's memory. The hunt is almost over. Justice has crossed the universe to find them. Fleet Admiral Ryu Taekwon stood in the ruins of the last Velothi stronghold and watched as the final High Harvester was led away in restraints designed by 17 different species. 3 years had passed since the siege began, and now the Velothi Empire was finally broken. The species that had terrorized galaxies for millions of years had been reduced to refugees begging for mercy from the very civilizations they had once harvested. The Velothi homeworld had been a massive artificial construct, built from the remains of countless harvested worlds over geological ages. Its destruction had taken careful planning and overwhelming force, but the Coalition had learned patience during their 40-year pursuit across the void. They had dismantled the structure piece by piece, liberating billions of enslaved beings, and destroying the infrastructure that had supported Velothi operations across multiple galaxies. President An Ji-woo arrived from the temporary Coalition capital to oversee the final surrender ceremonies. She had been elected by representatives of all Coalition species, chosen to lead the new government that had emerged from humanity's original pursuit mission. What had begun as a hunt for justice had evolved into something unprecedented, a multi-galactic civilization dedicated to protecting innocent life. The surrender took place in the same chamber where Velothi High Harvesters had planned the destruction of countless civilizations. Fleet Admiral Ryu Taekwon accepted the formal surrender documents, while representatives from dozens of liberated species watched the historic moment. The Velothi civilization is ended, he declared to the assembled witnesses. Their ships are destroyed, their weapons dismantled, their ability to harm others removed permanently. The survivors will be relocated to a single world under Coalition supervision, where they will learn to live without preying on others. Dr. Jung So-young had spent the past decade developing rehabilitation programs for worlds devastated by Velothi harvesting. Her work had liberated entire sectors of Andromeda, restoring civilizations that had been enslaved for centuries. The scale of recovery needed was enormous. But the Coalition had learned to think in terms of geological time during their long pursuit. "We are not seeking revenge," she explained to newly liberated populations throughout the galaxy. "We are restoring the natural order. Civilizations should be free to grow and develop without fear of harvest. That is the normal way of the universe." Ambassador Kim Youngmin had the difficult task of establishing relations with the original Galactic Council back in the Milky Way. The council members who had once declared intergalactic pursuit impossible now found themselves dealing with humans who had not only crossed the void between galaxies, but had conquered an entire empire on the other side. His first address to the Galactic Council became legendary throughout both galaxies. "We did not chase them for revenge," he said, standing before the same alien representatives who had once tried to stop the human pursuit. "We chased them because someone had to. Because in all the vastness of space, with all your advanced civilizations, no one else was willing to run them down." The transformation of human civilization during the long pursuit had been profound. The children born in the void between galaxies had grown up with a fundamentally different understanding of justice and consequence. To them, distance was irrelevant. Time was just another resource, and no crime was too old to punish if the victims deserved justice. President An Ji-woo established the persistence doctrine as the founding principle of the new coalition government. Any species that preyed upon innocent civilizations would face relentless pursuit, regardless of distance, time, or cost. The doctrine was broadcast throughout both the Milky Way and Andromeda galaxies, serving as both promise and warning. The doctrine had immediate effects throughout known space. Pirates and slavers who had operated with impunity suddenly found themselves hunted by coalition forces that never gave up. Aggressive civilizations that had bullied their neighbors discovered that someone was now watching, someone who would cross galaxies if necessary to deliver consequences. Fleet Admiral Ryu Taekwon oversaw the establishment of the Galactic Pursuit Command, a permanent military organization dedicated to hunting down threats to galactic peace. The command was headquartered on a mobile fleet that could respond to crises anywhere in either galaxy, carrying human persistence tactics throughout the universe. The pursuit ships that had crossed the void between galaxies were converted into mobile bases for the new organization. Their crews, trained in decades of relentless hunting, became the teachers who spread human concepts of justice throughout the known universe. Captain Park Junho, now an old man who had spent his entire adult life in pursuit of the Velathi, was chosen to lead the first class of Galactic Pursuit Command graduates. Students from hundreds of species came to learn human persistence tactics, studying the philosophy that had made intergalactic justice possible. The key to persistence hunting is understanding that distance is just time, he taught his diverse classes. If you are willing to spend the time, no distance is too great to cross. If your cause is just, no pursuit is too long to maintain. Dr. Jung Seoyoung's research into liberated Velathi territories revealed the full scope of what humanity had accomplished. Over 4,000 enslaved civilizations had been freed during the Andromeda campaign. Billions of sentient beings had been rescued from harvesting facilities. Entire sectors of space had been restored to freedom. But perhaps more importantly, the concept of cosmic justice had been established throughout the known universe. No longer could aggressive species assume that distance would protect them from consequences. The universe now had guardians who would pursue wrongdoers across any distance for as long as necessary. The first human ships began returning to the Milky Way 60 years after the original pursuit had begun. They brought with them representatives of 47 liberated species, technologies beyond imagination, and most importantly, proof that humanity's impossible mission had succeeded. The homecoming celebrations on Earth lasted for months, but the returning humans seemed oddly detached from the festivities. They had become something different during their long hunt, not just humans but universal citizens whose perspective encompassed multiple galaxies and countless species. Ambassador Kim Young-min's final address to the original Terran Defense Force became the defining moment of humanity's transformation from a single-planet species to galactic guardians. We left Earth as humans seeking justice for our own people, he said. We return as guardians of justice for all people, everywhere. The memorial to the original 200,000 humans whose capture had started the Great Pursuit was built on Earth's moon, visible to everyone who looked up at the night sky. But the memorial contained a dedication that looked forward rather than backward, to those who suffered so that justice could cross the stars. President An Ji-woo's final act before stepping down was to establish the Eternal Vigil, a commitment that humanity would maintain pursuit forces throughout the universe permanently. Never again would aggressive species be able to assume that distance could protect them from consequence. The Velathi survivors on their supervised world were required to study the history of their victims as part of their rehabilitation. Many of them struggled to understand why anyone would cross intergalactic space just to punish crimes against strangers. The concept of universal justice was completely alien to their harvesting mindset. As the first generation of void-born humans reached old age, their children and grandchildren continued the mission they had inherited. The Galactic Pursuit Command expanded to cover both galaxies completely, with human-trained officers serving on ships throughout the known universe. The universe had learned an important lesson from humanity's great pursuit. Actions have consequences, regardless of distance or time. Someone will always come for those who prey on the innocent, no matter how far they run or how long they hide. The Velathi's greatest mistake had been thinking that crossing the void between galaxies could save them from human determination. They learned too late that when humanity decides to chase something across the stars, distance only determines how long the hunt will take, never whether it will succeed. Humanity had become the universe's persistence hunters, and the cosmos was safer for it. The hunt that began with the capture of 200,000 humans had ended with the establishment of justice as a universal principle that could reach anywhere in the known universe. The stars themselves had learned to fear those who would harm the innocent, knowing that somewhere in the void, human ships were always watching, always ready to begin another impossible pursuit that would inevitably end in justice served.